Hello, my name is Francis. In this tutorial we are going to discuss how you can come up with a website from scratch. This tutorial is meant for absolute beginners. We'll get you started on how you can create your website. We are going to go from what is a website to the tools we need to get started to create one. Let's get started. If we start off from what is a website, website is pretty much a collection of pages, related web pages. These pages are actually linked together to create a website. These pages can be a home page where normally people who access these websites start from, navigate to other pages like about us, contact page, and other pages. These pages actually we can how these websites work, how you access your website from your browser. Normally we call it an HTTP client. It's actually a web client. It's normally what you use to access a website. Normally these websites are on a web server, which you can call an HTTP server. I will go about HTTP. There are normally files on a certain web server, and a certain web server can be located somewhere that you can access them using the internet. And these web servers are connected to the internet, and this network of connected computers can enable you to access a certain web server that has a website you are trying to access. Actually, using different protocols can enable you to access pages on this website. Like when you're in your browser, you use HTTP to access these websites. HTTP is a web standard that these web browsers use to communicate with a web server to get a certain web page that you are looking for. To go right next, HTTP has certain rules and certain protocols that we use to access different files on the server. They can be media files, they can be HTML files, they can be JavaScript files, and through HTTP we can get these files to our web client for people to view, for a user to view that website. So if we go to what our page is, A web page is normally composed of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And HTML is actually a markup language. Actually, HTML was developed to enable users categorizing different content on the website, and on top of that, CSS was needed to style these websites to get more beautiful content. To go about the different terminologies, we have HTML, the hypertext markup language, as you can abbreviate it. HTML is basically a text document, but with certain rules, with certain properties that enable display the content in a more organized way, like headings, like paragraphs, like pictures, like videos. All this content that is needed in a website, HTML helps us to organize that content in a manner that we can understand it. We can understand the meaning. We can get the meaning of this content. On the other hand, we have CSS. CSS, abbreviated as cascading style sheet. Cascading style sheet, normally you have this text, but most of the time you want certain text on different positions, in different colors. Like you need pictures of certain sizes. You need your website has different colors you want to use, like to reflect your brand. So CSS enables us to do the things. CSS enables us to arrange our content in a more pleasing, in a more presentable way of doing things. Like, to go back to HTML, HTML has gone through different versions ever since it was developed. Right now, we having HTML. We had HTML1, which didn't support like different media. Well, like HTML from 1 to version 4 didn't support like videos. It didn't support like graphics. But right now we have HTML5, which was released in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. HTML5 supports graphical content like SVG, like 2D. It supports different animation properties. It is more which it supports different different technologies and APIs, like the Geo API. Like HTML5 was a lot of things was included in HTML5 to better display different content to the user and collect different information from the user. So then we have JavaScript. JavaScript are normally called JS. JavaScript actually it's for adding more interaction to the website. Like you can have a pop-up, like you can have like a custom pop-up, you can have like a slider. All this is done in JavaScript. JavaScript adds more interaction to the website and make the website more interactive to the user. Like you can have certain things at certain times, which makes our website more organized than before. It adds more to organizing the website. So we can talk about the terminology, like the HTTP or HTTPS. What is HTTP? HTTP is basically hypertext transfer protocol. HTTP is the protocol we use to transfer text. We use to transfer hypertext markup from the server to the user in the web client. A web client, like the HTTP is just a protocol to transfer hypertext markup language. Yes, and HTTP also has gone through different versions. It's just HTTP like 1.0. Right now we have 2.0. HTTP is a standard. It's a standard for which means most of the browsers and most of the servers that we use today, most of the web servers we use today support HTTP, and they can communicate in the same way as any other browsers, like Chrome, like Safari, like Mozilla. They can all communicate to web servers in the same way and fetch the same website and use the same standards to fetch these web pages and media content. So you can expect to get the same thing that you get from Chrome, you get the same thing from Firefox, and you get the same thing from Edge. If we go next to the different types of websites, like we have different types of websites. We have the static websites, and we have the dynamic websites. Most of the time, the static websites, what are these static websites? Static websites normally are websites composed of only static content that never change according to the user preferences. Most of the time this content is written once, and the user cannot participate in this content. So this content, the user cannot change it. They can only view, but they can't change. Like some types of websites are like company websites, don't allow changing, don't allow you to change the websites when you visit them. They don't allow that. Normally on such websites only have static files. Like we have HTML, we have CSS, and JS, JavaScript, normally they are categorized as static files, including images, including the icons, your logo, All of these are static files. So such websites that only have that content are called static websites. So if we can go to dynamic, what are dynamic websites? Normally these websites are composed of the static data, but they have some input. They can have a user can change their preferences. Like a user can log in, can have a login page. They can log in, they can sign up, they can change different content. Like you can see, like YouTube, like Facebook, like Twitter. All these websites, all these are dynamic web applications. So they allow you to change your content. Normally they have an intermediary application, like I can say PHP, like Python. They can have like an intermediary application that is responsible to save your data in a certain database and retrieve it, like PHP. So these are responsible for getting your data from the database and compile it and generate a static file, an HTML file, an HTML content, because browsers understand HTML language. They don't understand PHP or Python. So these are just intermediary applications. They are also on the web server. So a web server can know which application is responsible for this type of language, and it forwards the page to that application, so that that application generates an HTML according to the data, according to the preferences you have chosen, and it renders an HTML page to the client. That's what this application do. So if we go right next to, we can go about different terminologies. We can go like PHP. PHP is basically, because we are going to use much of PHP, it's actually an hypertext markup processor language. It's a general purpose scripting language for web development. It's like an intermediary, it's an application on the server. Like we can have an Apache server that serves HTML web pages, and we have a PHP application that is responsible. Like if we have an HTTP, a web page that has PHP, and it's responsible to interpret the PHP in that website, and it generates an HTML page that is rendered to our web client. Normally we use such application to also access the database, like MySQL database. PHP and MySQL are open source. They are application that run on server, and PHP and MySQL is normally responsible for managing our data, and PHP can be responsible. PHP, it can be PHP, it can be Python, it can be any other language that you can use to access, to connect to the database and get the data, generate a static file that is required, a static HTML file that is required by the web client. So MySQL is a relational database. It's RDBMS. It's a relational database, an open source databases that is used to store data, organize data according to the user's preferences. So we can use, so in dynamic websites like I can say Facebook, you create an account. This account with your details, with your personal details, password and everything. These things are stored in the database, so that you can later, if you log in, they can access this data and customize your interface or your news feed according to your preferences, according to the data you have with them, according to the data you have that is related to your preferences. So normally these are applications that are involved. So if we can go to what we need to create a functional static website, normally we need HTML, CSS and JavaScript. For a dynamic website we need pretty much even other things, but for a basic HTML website, a static website, we need only these to get started, and they are actually very simple. They are actually simple. So to start your web journey, I recommend to start with basically this, to start with the HTML, CSS and JavaScript later. JavaScript more introduce you to the basic language. JavaScript is actually a scripting language. It's not more of a programming language, but it's a scripting language that can introduce you to on how you can, on the best concepts of programming. So we can go to the tools that we will need. We need an HTTP server, we need a web browser, then we need an HTML editor. For web browser, for an HTTP server, there is an open source server. The Apache server, it's free. It normally comes with certain web applications, with certain web server applications like XAMPP and WAMP. Most of the most common ones that we normally use, they come with Apache, the HTTP server, and you need a web browser, a web client like Safari, Chrome, anything you have. So thank you for watching this tutorial. In the next tutorial we'll be discussing on how to get these tools so that we can get started on developing our website. Thank you.